Okay, welcome to Into the Channel podcast, primarily about women's football. I am your host, Dino De Cespedes, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Grant Engel. What's up, man?
I'm feeling fantastic, buddy. I'm ready to get into match week 8. Season's hitting its stride. The Celtics are frauds. Oh, wait, different league. Doesn't matter. I digress already.
I've always got time for Celtics being frauds talk.
Always. Maybe another podcast, but we might get some more sprinkles of that in here as well. But I think we're in for another great week of the NWSL.
I love it. Yeah. Full slate, as mentioned. Felt a little empty with no midweek, Champions League. Well, I guess there was some men's Champions League, but that's still sitting on my DVR. I haven't caught up with what happened on the men's side. But big match week 8 coming up. That's exciting. Wait, yeah, this is match week 8. Yeah,
that's
really nice, really nice matchups. Excited to get into it. I wanted to do a quick sprint ahead, look ahead, preview, recap of what we've got coming up this weekend. Got some good matchups, but I want a little sprinkle through each of the 7. So I don't know. We can go any which order you want. I'll leave that to you, Mr. Grand Angle. Where do you want to get started?
Oh, I think you know where I want to get started. It's 1, with a frosty beverage, and 2, we got to do chronological order, right?
Let's go. I'm with it.
Seems like the right way to do a preview.
Yep. Cheers to chronology.
Mm-hmm. So let's start with Friday night, Racing Louisville, Gotham FC. I don't know, Racing Louisville, we're just coming off the Kentucky Derby. Horses versus bats. I don't know, like what we're talking about here. What are you looking for in this matchup?
I mean, obviously Racing Louisville has been the big question mark of the season. Is Gotham going to bounce back from that 0-0? Esther, obviously on an absolute tear, still leading the league in goals. What's Esther going to be able to do against Racing? But I continue to be super interested in like Louisville offensively. They continue to create chances. They're putting up those big XG numbers, not quite scoring, but super intriguing in terms of like who they've got, out on the pitch, and a match where I think both of these sides have a lot to play for, reasons to kind of like try to pull together this week and try to get a result happening. I don't think either side is probably particularly happy with the way this season has gone thus far.
I think that's fair to say. Even with Gotham sitting in 4th on the table, I mean, they probably feel like with 3 draws and 2 losses that they've left points out there for their expectations for their roster. I think you nail it with Esther. Must-watch television whenever she's on the pitch. You mentioned she's leading the Golden Boot race, 7 goals so far. She's the chief reason to watch them, in my opinion. It was announced, I think like a day or 2 ago, we're recording this on Thursday night, that Adi Borges for Racing Louisville had her suspension extended 3 more matches after the fact for making contact with the referee post-match after a red card. I think it was after her red card, which may or may not have come post-match. I'm foggy on the timeline, busy work week. Either way, they gave her more matches after the fact, which I'm still kind of like not sure how I feel about it. Like, obviously don't touch the referee, but also like we're doing a re-review after. I don't know if I love that, but I also want to point out Racing Louisville doesn't have a win at home this season. 0 wins, 1 draw, 2 losses. They're going to be looking for their first one. It's going to be tough to find it against Gotham.
It might be tough to find it, but obviously Louisville has some stuff going in their favor. We talked about how many shots they're able to put up there. They're leading the league 13.7 per 90. So they're getting shots up. They're not really able to cash in just yet. And then Gotham, we saw them kind of like, lay an egg last week against not the staunchest Chicago side, even despite the potential new manager bounce. So I think this one is going to be relatively exciting to kick off the weekend. Definitely going to be in that must-watch category for different reasons. But let's skip ahead here. This team, we're keeping it chronological, so you can just also pop open the schedule and figure out where we're headed. But 7:30 p.m. Pacific, because that's what time zone we rock with here in the ITC. Angel City hosting the Utah Royals. Safe to say arrows pointing in different directions?
Feels that way, certainly this season. We mentioned Astaire with her 7 goals. Riley Tiernan, not too far behind in the Golden Boot
Mm-hmm.
race with 5. Notched a brace last week versus Washington. And we all know this. It's part of the reason to watch. It's part of the reason Angel City fans should be excited. But I just want to point out with Tiernan sitting on 5 goals, Giselle Thompson is 19 years old, Alyssa Thompson is 20 years old, and Riley Tiernan is 22 years old. So not a bad core for Angel City FC to build around. And if you're Utah, you got to get something, man. I'm gonna shut up and pass the
Seriously.
ball to you, but you got to get something.
You got to get close. We
Yeah.
talked about last week, one shot on target, and granted, not the most talented side, but they just don't seem like they're getting anywhere dangerous. And I think it's gonna take some time. Obviously this is a road match against a team that's playing really well, or at least getting results. So I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think Utah is necessarily going to come in to Angel City and be like, all right, we should roll this team. Even though Angel City wasn't super strong last season,
Yeah.
but you got to get something. You have to get into some kind of rhythm. You have to take something from this match into next week where it's like, okay, well, now we've got this that we can start to build on. But I mean, from my point of view, doesn't look like the Royals have anything really that they can build on.
Yeah, and I mean we talk about it a lot. Like football can turn quickly, but how quickly do they need it to turn? I mean, I think it's worth pointing out. So they're in Los Angeles this week to play Angel City, who's been looking good. And even with the injuries, next week they go to Washington D.C. to play the Spirit. And the week after that, oh, they're at home. Isn't that nice for the Utah Royals? They're playing the Orlando Pride. So
Mm-hmm.
we could be looking at a situation where they're sitting on 4 points right now. Let's say they scratch out a draw versus Angel City, or maybe get a weird draw versus Washington or something. But we're living in a world where they could be sitting on 5 points after 10 matches, and then we really starting to get into, is the season totally lost at that point?
I think it's super close. I think it's already super close, to be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
you look at where they're at, you could probably look at Chicago. You could probably look at Houston and say, all right, these are the teams that we're in the same category. We don't feel like we are undermanned against those two sides. I think every other team in the league, Utah's got the short stack. So they're going to have
Yeah.
to figure out how to make a splash here in this one. On the other side, Angel City, how does Angel City take these positive results and start to build on them? So you talked about last week, this is a team that has dropped more points than any other side from a leading position. Picked that one up from the friends that expected own goals, who I think picked it up from someone else. I forgot the original pickup point, but either way, Angel City, a side that loves to drop points. Can this side, obviously Strauss incoming, not here yet, but can this side kind of like mature a little bit and be the type of club that's like, oh no, this is a team, this is a match that we should win. This is the match that we're going to come out here and win.
No, that's a great way to look at it. I mean, and I do wonder in this league, and maybe this is a thought exercise for another day, but when you have teams in this league, you don't have a top 3 situation who's like qualifying for Champions League. You have a top 8 of 14 teams in the league who are challenging for the playoffs. Is it fair to talk about a team that's battling for that 6, 7, 8 spot and saying, if you're for real, you'll handle this bottom of the league type team? I think in some cases it is, because just how bad Utah has looked this year. But I think, we love a good sports cliche. Might learn a lot about Angel City FC this week.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like, they've won 3 of 5
Yeah.
after starting the season with 2 draws. So like you said, they're in the mix. Their offense is cooking, 4.86 shots on target per 90. That's good for first in the league. Kennedy Fuller, 3 assists, also good for first in the league. I'm not sure that Utah's going to be able to hold up defensively against Angel City, especially where like that attack, you mentioned those young players. It's almost like that attack is maturing as well, like
Yeah.
before our eyes. So I think it might be a long day for that Utah defense. Fully expect Angel City to definitely get a result, but probably take home the 3 points in this one. But who knows? Unpredictable, chaos league, anything can happen. Let's scoot ahead to Saturday morning, 9:50 a.m. out here on the West Coast. PT. Chicago Stars host Washington Spirit. I mean, two more question marks, fair to say? Or maybe is that too early to say?
I don't know how much of a question mark Chicago is. It's not
That's
looking
fair.
great. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't know, man. Like you have a team like we're talking about, like with Utah. We'll talk about Houston later. Like where, to use another sports cliche, where it's getting late early,
Mm-hmm.
then you start to kind of to worry about what's happening. I still feel like we could still say it's early for Washington Spirit because of the injuries, because they're going to get some players back. Now, we haven't talked about it at length, and we don't speculate like a ton on injuries. I'm just, you just got to be worried about Trinity Rodman's back injury here, because when we're talking about a back injury, and from watching sports, like what that looks like over time. Like really, in some cases, if you're ever having the debate of how much rest can I do or how much rest can I get versus should I get surgery, never a great place to be. So, if that's part of the debate, and I'm not reporting that it is, obviously, but if that's part of the calculus, that's worrisome. But still, I think Spirit has the benefit of the doubt because of the roster. You got to get Kruger back. You got to get Sarr back. You got to get Santos back, who missed the last match. The Croy Bethune needs to work her way back in. Hal Hirschfeld needs to work her way back in. I just rattled off 6 absolutely incredible top tier players in the league. But if you're Spirit, can you get some points on the road here, and then get back into the swing of things when some of your players return?
Yeah, you mentioned I think Casey Kruger. You could throw into that mix of a player that still waiting to rejoin the fray.
Yep.
Quick note on Gift Monday, Washington attacker, who I think is obviously not going to solve all these problems, but really interesting player. I think he's a 23-year-old from Nigeria, but leading the league non-penalty XG per shot is 0.36 per shot. So that's every 3 shots. She's over a goal. Obviously not a ton of attempts just yet. But I agree with you, man. I think the injury stuff is concerning. I think Hirschfeld is the one that it's easy to kind of look over because there's a lot of big names that are very recognizable. I mean, even a player like Aubrey Kingsbury. I mean, Kingsbury is near the top of the league. We talked about it even all the way back to the Challenge Cup. Like a player that is on that short list of best keepers in the league. And I think a player that is probably on track to having one of the 2 or 3 best seasons this year of all the goalkeepers. So I think Kingsbury missed the last game. Hirschfeld will see. But I think the thing I was going to say about injuries is sometimes it's just so many injuries, so many, like the door continues to revolve. The chemistry doesn't really quite get set. Like we were talking about, like we'll be a third of the way through the season after this weekend. So like, what are we really talking about? Like at some point, soon we'll be halfway through the season. It's like, yeah, there's players that are kind of quote coming back. But I mean, I remember a player like Ule Sarr last year. We were expecting Sarr back last year, the end of last season. And I think obviously not fully keyed in on what the setbacks could have been there. But I agree with you, man. I think it could be a little scary.
Yeah, no doubt. And, we talked about the return of Rosamond Kouassi. She's going to have to work her way back in. She looked all right in the last match, in her last appearance. So, yeah, you just kind of got to see it. And it's a great point. Like, if you can never quite get the chemistry right, you've seen a lot of great teams. You just kind of end up with a lost season when I like the way you describe it, a revolving door of injuries. On the Chicago side, did get some good news, some positive news here. Mel Swanson announced her pregnancy this week, which is a relief to many fans who are just kind of like in between of like what's going on with her status. So congrats to her and her husband, who's a pretty decent athlete in his own right, 2021 World Series champion with the Atlanta Braves. For anybody who cares about that kind of thing, Dansby Swanson fielded the final ground ball in Game 6 of the 2021 World Series to seal the title for the Bravos. But again, I digress. I think Chicago is, they're living in. So obviously, congrats to the Swansons. But Chicago, they're in full on salvage the season mode. So Mel Swanson's not walking through that door to play any matches. So even with Washington being banged up and Chicago being at home, you don't want to be in a salvage the season mode playing against the Washington Spirit. So it's going to be a tough one for them.
Yep, totally agree with that. All right, let's go ahead. 4:30 p.m. North Carolina Courage host still my
All
Orlando
right.
Pride. We'll see what kind of bounce back we get. It's been interesting, weird to say, but I think this one also might sport a couple different sides with arrows pointing in opposite directions. The Courage, 2 straight wins, looking good after a really slow start. We talked about Orlando. Seb Hines, not quite on the hot seat, just joking. Definitely not on the hot seat. But he's lost. The Pride have lost 2 of 3, and this team does struggle when they head to carry. And I think if that trend continues, we could be at a point this season where, not quite panic meter point in the season, but we could be at a point in the season where it's like, all right, maybe it's a personnel fix, maybe it's a stylistic fix, maybe it's a tactical or strategic fix. But I think we'll know at that point if Orlando comes out and the offense looks stalled again, even though it's at North Carolina, you know what that team's about. It might be time to say, all right, well, I wouldn't be surprised if, and I'm doing the look ahead, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see some real shuffling, because I think there's enough here to say, well, it might be something.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. In that same vein, like you said, North Carolina, traditionally, historically tough at home. They scratched out a 0-0 draw versus the Pride, during their absolute sick run last year, their dominating run last year.
Mm-hmm.
But also the Pride did beat the Courage 4-1 in Orlando last year. So that, there was a gap in quality between the two sides. Even with losing 2 of the last 3 matches, Pride are 5 wins, 0 draws, 2 losses on the season. One of 3 teams in the league without a draw yet this year. Kansas City and Washington are the other 2. Feels like this isn't going to be exactly a bold take. We might have a Barbara Benda game incoming here. She had that brace in the opening week in that 6-0 drubbing of Chicago Stars FC. But she's only had two goals in the last 6 matches. You got to expect the production to come back. You can only hold Barbara Benda back for so long. So I'm keeping my eye out for this. Here's my bold take. Barbara Benda is going to score a goal in a football game. Well, what a revolutionary idea that is.
I could definitely see that happening, but I continue to think that the Pride have to connect. They have to connect some stuff in the midfield.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got to make
fair.
it a little bit easier. It can't just be kick it over the top, let Banda run onto it, and which could happen. But it seems a little bit of like not something that you want to continue to go back to, and a little bit easy to defend. Because I think if teams are slightly more prepared for it this year than they were last season, but I think Orlando have to figure out who in the midfield is going to play that role to be able to advance the ball, get it upfield, put pressure on defenses, be able to drive or pass in any direction. And the Courage is a little bit of a tough customer to be able to come back and try to do that against. And I think, when you look at like an Ashley Sanchez, what she was able to do last week, and just stylistically, I think they are playing a little bit more on the front foot, a little bit more assertive in the attack, and a little bit more varied in the attack as well. I think this could be a sneaky tough matchup for Orlando.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. And I'm trying to remember like all off the top of my head, but there was no Rafaele last week, no Summer Yates, no Julie Doyle. So I think there's, the cavalry is around somewhere.
Nadanner.
They're just not Nadanner, also. So they're just not on the field yet. So there might be a little bit of like Washington spirit, like, hey, we don't have some of our like stalwart, some of our like fence post type players around the pitch, which could be contributing to some of this. A mini Schneid, if you will, if losing 2 or 3 for the first time in like a year plus, could be considered a Schneid. But yeah, I'm nowhere near the panic button for Orlando Pride just yet.
Yeah, my car's got a little seat warmer. It's on level 1. You barely feel it. That's kind of where Orlando's at right now. And
Sure.
it could all just be totally boot. They could come out and win 4-1 and I'll feel a little bit like a dummy. But I don't know. That's kind of my read on it.
I like it.
Now, potentially, the matchup of the weekend. Who is
Wow.
that? It seems weird. Didn't even seem possible. Maybe even 2 weeks ago, 7 p.m. Pacific. San Diego Wave hosting Portland Thorns in a battle of what I like to call these teams are currently where in the standings?
There you go. Nicely done. Yeah, no, I totally kind of surprising, which is funny. 2 years ago, San Diego Wave win the Shield. Portland Thorns, a common contender for both the Shield and the NWSL Championship. But think of the turnover and think of the personnel loss that these teams have had over the last 2 seasons, particularly. I think this is the second contender. I mean, honestly, I'm glad you mentioned this. I feel like Courage Pride is probably my number one contender for match of the week, but I think this is number two. Those two are both going to be absolute must watch on Saturday. This one, a next level. It'll be NWSL After Dark for our pals over on the East Coast. I can't wait to watch this one.
Going to be an absolute banger. I think stylistically, it's going to be a fun matchup because San Diego this year just clinical. Like you look at, let me see where we're at. Yeah, they've turned 43% of their shots on target into goals. I think we looked at like even Barcelona at their peak was in like the high 30s. So they're a little bit better than that. And they're averaging one goal every 6 shots, San Diego Wave.
All right.
And then they're getting off 11.1 per 90. So they're definitely getting them up. And then that's first in the league in both categories. They're also first in all 3 categories, short, medium, and long passes, and also pass completion. While the rest of the league is between 67 and 79%, San Diego's at 82.5% of all passes. The entire team absolutely cooking, also leading the league in assists, also leading the league in goal creating actions per 90. This is a team that, I don't know, man, like there's something here. There's definitely something here. I'm not sure if they'll be able to sustain it. But to this point, even where they're at, where they're third in the table, I still think it's possible that they might be being slept on. I think they could be that good.
I think it's probably true. And for two guys who were not at all San Diego Wave guys before the season, I'm still maintaining a little bit of skepticism. I'll give you credit, man. You identified it real early. Like it did not take more than a couple matches for you to be like, nah, you started to change your mind early and identify that you thought there was some real stuff here. I mean, you mentioned the passing numbers. They're absolutely fantastic. Savannah McCaskill and Kenza Dali are top 5 in the league in passes into the final third. Dali and Delphine Cascarino are top 5 in passes into the penalty area. They're running right at you. They're possessing the ball in danger areas, and they have the players with the skill to score.
100%. Yeah. Congratulations to Kenza Dali and Delphine Cascarino, selected to April's best 11 for the NWSL. On the Portland side, though, I mentioned an interesting stylistic matchup. So obviously, we know what San Diego's about. They're going to be clinical. They're going to be sharp. Portland's just going to try to overwhelm you. They're going to try to kick it, kick it hard, kick it off it, do what they can do. This is a team second in the league, shot creating actions per 90, 23.6 monster number there. Key passes. Olivia Moultrie is second in that category with 18. Sam Coffey fourth in that category with 16. They're getting it done. Raylan Turner second in the league, non-penalty XG this season 3.9. They're figuring. I mean, credit to Portland. This is another team that we sold all our stock. Yep. we emptied the account, just unload all of it, and they found a way to get it together. Minus Sophia Wilson, and I don't know that this is secretly a very, very tasty matchup. I'm going to be excited to watch this one.
Yeah, I'm a dope. I absolutely sold off all the stock. I think in our season preview, I was like, probably bottom 3. It's time. They're not going to be able to replace the retirement of Christine Sinclair and the maternity leave of Sophie Wilson. But they're doing it. They're patching it together. Like you said, Raylan Turner, pardon me, 3 goals. It's just like everywhere you look, like players have like goal creating actions and like big goals or assists just all over the field, and they're just figuring out a way to get it done. And it just kind of made me think. I put it in my notes that the Portland Thorns, think about their season last year where they had these big swings of like real kind of like ugly looking down swings, and then they were able to claw it back. They might be the zombie team of the NWSL, where it's just like this team is not going to go away because that's their pedigree as a club.
I believe it. I mean, it's going to be a tall task to kind of take this season anywhere into deep waters, but these good organizations, and we see this across sports, like this means something. Like when you lose a player of Wilson's caliber, and it's easy to pack it in and be like, all right, well, okay, this isn't the playoff year. That's okay. We'll live with it.
Yeah.
But for a team to kind of like really kind of pull together and be as competitive as pretty much any team in the league, that really says a lot. I think other players in the league notice that. Definitely goes a long way. And I think this match is going to be a banger. Like just through and through, Saturday night, this one's going to be fun. But I do want to scoot ahead. Sunday morning, 9:50 a.m., Kansas City Current hosting my other team, Bay FC. This one should be good. KC, for all the, I'm looking at these numbers, for all the hubbub about KC and their defense, only 5 goals allowed this season. I was a little surprised by that number. Current Bay FC, they'll lock up Sunday morning. What are you going to be looking for in this one?
Yeah, I think the defense has been good. I mean, this is my third contender for match of the week. I think it's pretty safe to say. I've already used the word once, which I hate because I put it in my notes. But
Hubbub,
not hubbub. Great use of hubbub by you. But I want to say there's one thing and one thing only Kansas City Current is looking to do in this match: get off the schneid. Once
D Schneid.
The D Schneid. They've lost 2 matches in a row. I think they had a 3-loss stretch last year that was like kind of weird. I think it was sandwiched in between that loss to your Orlando Pride before the Olympic break, and then they lost 2 more after it, if memory serves. So that's kind of like a weird 3-game losing stretch. I think it'd be pretty odd. Maybe a little worrisome if they had that here. But again, this is another team. There's too much talent. I don't expect that to happen. Our guy, Tom Baum from Shades of Blue, from the 12, from the Current Moment, one of the best NWSL, just general football reporters out there in the world. I had a chat with him last week, and he had mentioned how large the absences of Michelle Cooper and Nichelle Prince loomed over that Seattle Reign Kansas City Current match. So I'll be interested to see if either of them are back. I haven't seen any injury updates on them just yet. And Tom Baum also pointed out that in that last match versus Seattle Reign FC, that Claire Hutton probably had her worst match as a pro. And he didn't say it in like a derogatory way. It's actually a testament to how well she's played her entire young career. And now that she's like 1 season and 7 matches in. But there's one thing that leads me to believe is we're probably due for a Claire Hutton bounce back game.
Yeah, I could see that. Could be a long day for Bay FC. You mentioned those 2 straight losses for Kansas City. Feels like they've been hit a little bit differently by the injury bug because they've had players coming back in addition to players cycling out. So, Chewinga's out. She comes off the bench in one match. Bia, I think she rejoins the squad, maybe the match prior. No Michelle Cooper. So some flux there. So I think that it is a little tricky when you have it going both directions. But I think I'd hate to be playing this KC Current side coming out 2 losses, especially if you're Bay FC, who's, in a bit of a wobble. It's funny, I think, thinking about both expansion teams from last year, Utah and Bay, it's almost like the sophomore slump a little bit, where it's like, okay, some stuff to build on in that first year, right? Like some important foundational pieces, some building blocks, some momentum, and it's like, oh, well, what are we going to do next year? Well, let's add 3 wins to the total. And then these couple losses, those will be a draw, and there's another 9 points this season. And I think that's obviously a trap, like a
It always
logical
is.
kind of fallacy where it's like, okay, it's a natural progression that we're going to be expecting. But it's interesting to see both teams, expansion teams from last year, kind of backslide a little bit. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's what the season is going to be about, but it's going to be something to monitor, and they're going to have to find some kind of solution because these other established teams, they're making adjustments obviously week in, week out. And they've sort of gone through. They've had a longer runway into the season, but I don't know. I think Bay FC. I think they're up against it this week against KC.
It's such a great point by you because when we came into this season, we talked about like, okay, Sentnor is going to take a step. They got some more help around her. Some of the help that they got in last year's summer window is going to be more comfortable playing around Sentnor. Zornoza, Tanaka, like all these pieces that they've added, and I get fooled by it way more often than not. You could talk yourself into like quarterbacks and the rookie quarterbacks in the NFL where you're just like, well, yeah, obviously he's going to get better in the second year. And there are so many times where like the progression is not linear. I think it's a great point to make about Bay FC, and you're seeing it with Utah Royals right now. I want to say Jordan Silkowitz, she saved that penalty last week against San Diego. She kept Bay in the game as much as she could. I think she's looked fine for most of the season. She's had some really good moments, and then some really, she's been put in some tricky spots, has had a couple scary moments too back there at goal. The other part I want to kind of jump off from here with is let's just start the clock on when are we going to see an Asisa Oshwala goal? Because we got to see one eventually, and if you're Bay FC, it's got to be sooner rather than later.
Well, let me ask you this: if I give you Oshwala over under 1.5 goals this season,
it's got to be. It can't be under. It can't be under for Oshwala. If it's under, it's an unmitigated disaster for the club.
Yeah, I mean, even with that said, I think I'd still pause at least a beat and be like, damn, have I seen anything this season that leads me to believe that a goal... I'm not sure if she's managed a shot yet. I don't think she has, because I think the last time we looked at it, she was at 0 shots, and I don't think she's played. She definitely play last week, or didn't start.
Right.
Either way, I could fact check that. Yeah, go ahead and I'll fact check that.
Yeah, and I want to shout out our guy Goog, who has pointed out that Oshwala has looked a little rough in terms of going to get the ball, and then when going forward, having turnovers and kind of getting herself into trouble essentially on the ball. So it's not all Oshwala lacking the service from her teammates. She's definitely accountable for some of the struggles, but you gotta figure it out, like with her and I think Kuninaji has looked good, started to look a little more confident in spots, but you can't have Oshwala on the team and not get the ball to her in front of goal, and she's partly responsible for that.
Yeah, it definitely at least shares some of that responsibility. I just double checked it. 1 shot, 234 minutes this season.
Come on, man.
At that point, that 1.5, I'm staring at it for another minute or two here, trying to figure out what I'm penciling in here with my number 2 pencil. Either way, all right, we're on Oshwala watch for sure. I would love to see that number more like a 6, 7, 8. See her get back on track and then really have that Bay FC. Just give them another killer up front. I'm definitely excited about Lima, Kuninaji you mentioned. I think they still a transition year, but I think there could be something there. Nothing. Oshwala getting back on track is a good thing for everybody. So let's hope to see that happening. And now, the closer of the weekend, 5 p.m. Pacific. Your Seattle Reign hosting, not Racing Louisville, but the Houston Dash in the last match of the weekend. This is your domain. I'll clear out here for you. What are you going to be looking for in this one?
I'll be in the building on
go.
Sunday to close out the weekend. A lovely Sunday in Seattle. This feels like another one of those, like you were talking about with Angel City. How good are you type of matches. Like if you're Seattle Reign FC, like can you have a Houston Dash team that's been kind of struggling, I guess, maybe not even struggling, but just a team that doesn't look to be as good as you, a team that's sitting closer to the bottom of the table. I think Reign have like 4 points on them in the table, so it's not like a massive gulf or anything like that. But I think most folks,
it's not a massive gulf. Same 4-point gulf between Seattle and KC Current and Orlando Pride. So let's fucking go.
There you go. Okay, well that you know what? Now you've kind of reframed it for me a little bit, because I would say there's maybe a substantial gulf, but also I could have some pals at Seattle Reign FC who could look at me and say, "Oh, it's a massive gulf between us and Kansas City, the team we beat last week." You mean?
Yep. Which way is this gulf going? Is it heading America way or is it heading Mexico way? I'm not sure. Let's go.
There you go. A fair question. I mean, this league is just fucking outrageous, by the way. But I think it's going to be a situation where if Seattle is able to, take control of the match early and see it out, that would perk up an eyebrow for me, where it's like, okay, so now you're competing really well against the Kansas Cities of the world, and then you're kind of grabbing the game by the scruff of the neck against a team that's near the bottom of the table. Perhaps people should start really looking at this team as a middle of the playoff contender, not like squeaking in the 8th spot, but like can you kind of easily walk into the playoffs in like 4th, 5th, 6th?
That would definitely be something. And it's so funny. Seattle's like stuck in that 7th spot, which is where I had them in preseason. It feels like they've been there since like the first week. The math doesn't check out on that, but I don't know. Somehow that feels accurate. Yeah. What I'm excited about with Seattle, we talk a lot about the defense. You got like, the veterans there, Jordan Bugg, we've been excited about. But Claudia Dickey, I think in goal, we started talking about this last season. I think she's really put it together. You look at the stats, like, kind of like across the board, goalkeeping wise, and she's in the mix of pretty much every major stat. She's in the top 3 or 4 of the league this season. Also, definitely passes the eye test. I think she's playing really well, and just a great backstop for them defensively. Houston's got a team that can throw a curveball at you and maybe steal one. I'm not sure if they could necessarily steal 2, and I think that's kind of where this game is going to break one way or the other. Is can Seattle's defense, who should be in the dominant position most of this match, to your point, can they control the match with their defense? And then offensively, can they break through? Like Lynn Biondola, I think she's definitely had some moments. It was cool to see the connectivity between her and Haitama. I think it's definitely been brewing. I think you've seen little smidges here and there. The whole team, the whole offense as a unit hasn't been able to put it together from my perspective. But you've definitely seen some stuff to kind of get excited about. Maddie Darlene, I think, as well. Offensively, what would represent like Seattle turning a corner that they can actually do on the field versus Houston?
Crooked number time. Like put up 2 or 3 and kind of have your run of the game, I would say. And speaking of like offensively, you mentioned Maddie Darlene, the rookie, currently 2nd in the league in both carries into the penalty area. She's only 3 behind Barbara Benda. And then second in the league in progressive passes received, 3 behind Rachel Kundanaji. So pretty good company for her to be in. I want to point out, Sam Meza leads the league in tackles. According to the club, Seattle Reign FC, she has 31. According to FB Ref, she has 30. So we have a stats fight there. Perhaps they take issue with FB Ref shorting her 1 tackle. I also want to point out that Phoebe McClernand has 52 clearances to lead the league, and Jordan Bugg has 42 clearances, which is good for 4th. So there is some clearances is always an interesting one for me because I'm like, okay, that's good that you're getting the ball out of there, but why do you got so many is always a question, is like my next like logical question. But to answer your question, for the offense to look good, you want to see Darlene's development continue, but like you pointed out, Haitama winning balls in the air in dangerous areas and Lynn Biondola being there to clean it up was the recipe last week, it's a pretty good recipe that you could look for, considering Heidema's height, no pun intended, but and Biandolo's just nose for scoring goals.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's funny you mentioned that stat because I had one for Dickey as well. This is funny that I was like, is this a good thing or not a bad thing? But Dickey's first in the league in post-shot XG minus real G allowed. So it's like the quality of the shot. Yeah, what can Dickey do about that? And then what was the net result? From a real G standpoint, did the other team score? Did they not? So Dickey's at 0.67 per 90, which kind of reads like she's saving 2/3 of a goal per 90, which is pretty awesome. But either way, I was like, is that a good situation to be in? The XG is so high, and like the delta is like something that you're kind of racking up there. But either way, I think you watch Seattle, they look like a 5-8 playoff team. And to your point, how high could they reach the season? And I think it's interesting because there's the Orlando, there's the Kansas City, there's the Washington that's got the question mark. And then after that, Gotham, I think, is also there, but with some question marks. I don't think there's any team in that 5-8, 5-9, 5-10 mix that's looking at Gotham or looking at Washington, especially in their current shape, and being like, we can't catch that side. So I think it's going to be definitely pretty wide open, and would love to see Seattle kind of stamp themselves as like a real playoff inside track kind of team this weekend.
And it's kind of funny to say like that a win over, and I realize I was the one who brought it up, that a win over Houston Dash, who was bottom of the table last year, near the bottom of the table this year, that a win over Houston Dash would be like the thing that cements them as like a real playoff contender. But we're talking about like winning in dominant fashion. I think I think it's at least a signal that they could be in that class. I want to point out, I'm glad you threw out these Claudia Dickey stats. The shadow executive producer of this program pointed out to me that there was some buzz on NWSL Reddit of when does Claudia Dickey get a look for the U.S. Women's National Team squad. And I also want to shout out our pal Van Crisp over at the Cooler Guild. If you have any interest in Seattle Reign FC, you should immediately subscribe and follow the Cooler Guild podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your fine podcasts. But Van Crisp is a goalie herself and pointed out to me that she really likes Claudia Dickey's first step before the ball is played, and feels like Dickey is putting herself like in good positions to stop those shots. So that stat of the post-shot XG minus real G kind of makes that put it in context a little bit for me, where it's even when the opponent is getting a good look, Dickey's putting herself in a pretty good position to stop it. Yeah.
No, I mean, that's a real keeper. And like I said, she's top 3 or 4 in pretty much every big stat. I'm realizing I rehashed our PTJ
that's great
description. Not on purpose, but we keep it moving. All right, episode calendar. Quick look ahead. All right, match week 8. We'll be back with some recaps early next week. Come rock with us for that, and more Champions League coverage. Obviously, May 25th. What are we? May 10th. Yeah, 25th. 2 weeks away. 2 weeks from this weekend, we will get our Champions League final, Barcelona versus Arsenal. We're gonna have some special guests. We're lining them up, filling up our calendar, our super secret Champions League final guest calendar. Can't wait to unleash that. Super exciting stuff, man. Anything else you want to hit before we get out of here?
I think that's it. The final's on Saturday, May 24th.
My bad. Thank you for the correction.
No, all good. It is the most important match of that day. I will say just barely squeaking out Rosenborg versus Brann in top Syrian. Next year, they'll have to reschedule that fixture, obviously, because Brann will be playing in the Champions League final.
Yep. Just pop it a couple days. Maybe they could do a twofer, a little doubleheader. That should even.
You know what? They're strong enough to. I would never put it past the Norwegian side. But yeah, man, special guests like Dino said lined up. We got some real heaters coming in. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Awesome, man. This has been another episode of the channel. Thank you for hanging out. If you enjoyed the show or love Women's Football as much as your boys do, make sure you kick in with us each and every single week. Like if you liked, subscribe, follow YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to watch or listen. Leave us a review. over your favorite podcast app. We want to hear from you. We love hearing from you. Links to all of our socials, except one, in the show notes of this episode. And a big thank you to my co-host as well, Mr. Grant Engel, for recap, precap, preview, Champions League, single header, double header, doesn't matter. My guy's always ready. I appreciate you, bro.
Likewise, buddy. I think, like I said, ready for a good week of matches. And, we'll come back for the review and figure out all the stuff we got wrong. And when we said like, oh yeah, this team should win this way, this team should lose this way. And then none of it matters after we actually watch the games on the field.
I love it. Let's go. I'll be here for it.
Yeah, that's what this league provides. And so thank you all for watching with us or hanging out with us, watching with us. I guess we watch the show too while it's happening. Who cares? Whatever.
Some of you guys are listening. Appreciate you guys too.
Yeah, everybody. You know what? If you want to watch two very sleepy men talk about the NWSL, you go ahead and do that. We appreciate you rocking with us, and we will see you all next time.